Hi Annaliese, welcome to Canada. I'm all friends girl Reptile, and I always read my teleprompter correctly. There's a lot to know about reptiles. Historically, there have been relatively few studies compared to a lot of other animals, which is a shame because there's a lot to learn. The good news is that we're making up for lost time and we are discovering so much so quickly. It can be hard to keep up with it all, but today I'm going to share with you some of my favorite facts that I've learned about reptiles in the past 4+ years of my YouTubing. Let's get to it. So 4-ish years into YouTube, almost 500,000 views, over 300 videos, almost 100 hours of me talking to a camera translates to like roughly 17,653 neato facts and tidbits of trivia. You know how sometimes you learn something and then that information just seems to slip out of your ears immediately? Or is that just me in math? Anyway, when it comes to reptiles, I tend to retain most of what I've learned, and I love chit-chatting with my parents, my friends, other reptile keepers, strangers I meet on the bus, anyone really, about some of my favorite facts. So today I am sharing them with you. My wide range of videos span many different things, almost all pertaining to reptiles. Because of this, I have learned a lot of weird, obscure, fascinating, and perplexing things about reptiles, like chameleon bones glow in the dark. Now, I have a whole video that, if the analytics are to be trusted, you probably didn't see. Chameleon bones glow in the dark so that they can communicate with each other without drawing the attention of predators. Or at least, that's what the science hippies think is happening. If you've ever seen a chameleon, you know that they don't have much in terms of self-defense, aside from hoping really hard to go unnoticed. So having a way to communicate with one another in the dark without sound or big movements would be helpful, to say the least. So chameleons decided to take advantage of bones' natural tendency to fluoresce under UV light. Yeah, your bones do too, by the way. Next time you get a compound fracture, just shine a UV light on the bitty bony bit that's just sticking out of your meat suit. You'll see that it glows. You know, if that'll cheer you up. Maybe the squeamish people out there won't like doing that. I highly recommend it regardless. Chameleons can alter the transparency of their skin over bony protrusions in certain ways to allow the glowy goodness to shine through. Well, maybe not exactly shine, more like dimly glow blue through. It's subtle, but to other chameleons who are looking for that, they can pick it out against the other things in the forest reflecting the UV light, and can understand the message being conveyed. It does the job of enticing a mate, or it tells an intruder to beat it, or catch up with all the jungle goss, or whatever it is that they talk about, all while keeping still and absolutely quiet. It's quite impressive if you think about it. Now, you might want to rush to the comment section right away once you hear this next one, but I would really appreciate it if you just hold off until I explain, okay? Are you ready? Snakes don't smell with their tongues. Yeah, I know. Everyone knows that's why snakes flick their tongue. Of course they smell with their tongues. Shh, all Canadian reptile girl? More like all Canadian doesn't know what she's talking about, eh? Well, remember when I said we were learning all sorts of new things about reptiles? Well, this is one of them. Scientists like Dr. Kurt Schwenk, snake tongue expert who helped me on my full video on this topic, have learned that how snakes intake and process olfactory information is a little bit more complex than just tongue smelling. Here's the gist of it. Snakes smell with their nose, just like you or I. And when you dangle a tasty rat in front of your snake, they're going to smell it with their nose first. They then engage the big guns, a much more sophisticated and sensitive tool for collecting information about the world. Those big guns are in the form of these two teeny tiny points at the end of their tongue. These widely spread tines pick up molecules from the air or surfaces in stereo and bring them back into the mouth. It used to be thought that the tines would deposit the particles into holes on the roof of the mouth, leading to the Jacobson organ, but we now know that the tines actually lay in two little slots at the bottom of the mouth that, when the mouth is closed, creates little sealed pockets with those holes that I mentioned at the top. At the bottom of those little pockets are salivary glands. When the prongs rest in those slots, basically a stream of saliva power washes the tines, and the stream of saliva then carries the particles up and into those holes on the roof of the mouth, leading to the Jacobson organ. Sensitive olfactory receptors there then send the information to the brain where it is processed and interpreted. So, while the points of the tongue do play an important role in collecting and transmitting olfactory information, they don't actually smell with it, or taste with it either, by the way. And it's saliva that actually transmit the particles to the organ that figures out what's what. That said, to explain what a snake is doing when they're tongue flicking to a kid or someone who isn't super nerdy about reptiles, saying they're smelling is just fine. It may be a bit imprecise, but it's close enough, right? Moving on, this one is a bit odd and maybe gross to some, but I think it is actually quite impressive. And that would be the adaptive ballast. If you don't know, a ballast is basically a heavy or dense substance that can improve stability or control. Sandbags in a hot air balloon. No, that's my mic. Sandbags in a hot air balloon, or ships or submarines that can pump water in or out of specialized compartments, that kind of thing. This is a concept often used by heavier-bodied ambush snakes like Dumeral's boas, Burmese pythons, or gaboon vipers, and many others. They use this ballast to act as an additional weight to anchor powerful strikes and help wrap or subdue potentially powerful, struggling prey. Oh, what is it that's acting as the ballast, you ask? Well, poop. It's a poop anchor. Yep. These ambush snakes will hold onto their poop for months on end. I believe that a gaboon viper holds the record for the longest to hold onto its poop, as in like well over a year. I think it was like over 400 days, quite a long time. Storing poop this way increases the mass, concentrated at the back of the snake. Unlike muscle or other body tissue, this mass requires no extra energy to produce or maintain. It does require a little more energy to move it around, but for a heavy-bodied ambush snake that often will lie in wait unmoving for days or even weeks at a time, that's not really an issue. In the event that they do need to move quickly or over long distances, they just poop and dump, see what I did there, up to 30% of their weight to make it easier and less expensive energy-wise to boogie. But while they retain it, they benefit from extra inertia and friction to solidly anchor for a strike and having more mass for their prey to contend with. How cool is that? So if your Dumeral's boa only poops 2 to 3 times a year like mine do, they're just taking advantage of an incredible bit of evolution by making within themselves an effective, if smelly, adaptive ballast. As cool as it is, adaptive ballast stinks. But you know what's even cooler and doesn't stink? My patrons. That was a terrible segue, I am so sorry. I'd like to take a minute and thank my patrons on Patreon. Their contributions help make this possible. Their support goes directly to feeding my animals, covering costs of equipment, travel, and even supplies for enclosures when I have to buy stuff instead of just making them out of garbage. I can't thank them enough. I've got lots of exciting stuff planned for this year, and the support I get helps me make that happen. If you want to help too, please head on over to patreon.com/allcanadianreptilegirl. And if Patreon isn't your thing, that is totally fine. You can still lend a hand by hitting that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to know all the YouTube stuff. Thank you so much. Okay, what's next? Oh yeah. How smart reptiles are. This might be obvious to a lot of you, and you may think that this kind of goes without saying. However, I still think it should be highlighted, as the general public impression of reptiles as a group is that they aren't bright. And that's just not true. This area of focus is getting a ton of new studies and literally rewriting everything we knew about reptile thinky bits. A full detailed video on reptile intelligence is something that I've been working on and talking about producing for a long time, but things are changing very fast. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack and refute and explain, and I want to make sure that I do it right and at the right time. So it is coming, just not for a while. Either way, reptiles are not dumb. Well, okay, my sand boa is pretty dim, but that could just be him specifically. We won't tell him, we love him anyways. There are countless examples of reptiles displaying incredible intelligence. Many bird species, for example, are amongst the smartest animals in the world. Birds being classified as reptiles is another cool thing that I learned. That was back when I was like 6, long before the channel, so it doesn't actually count, but it's like a bonus 6th one. Shh, don't tell anyone. Impressive intelligence is displayed in other reptile families too. Lizards have many amazing examples of great intelligence. One of my favorites, black and white tegus, are incredibly smart. While not as obedient, studies show that they have problem-solving abilities comparable or even greater than that of dogs. They're not really a social species, preferring to not interact with other animals or other tegus outside of mating, but they still have rules and body language to communicate with one another, and they can learn how to cooperate with each other if needed, and even show affection to their human caretakers, and sometimes other pets too. They can learn their name, be potty trained, and even follow commands when they want to. Monitor lizards are arguably even smarter than tegus. I was immensely impressed at the Asian water monitor I met at Clint's Reptiles. I referred to him as Kevin at the time, but he's got an official name now, Leonard. He was so clever, curious, attentive, and very sweet. And it's not just big lizards either. Even little lizards like my Schneider skink Raylan exhibit lots of intelligence. Raylan knows his name, he comes when he's called by me, he even reacts to other noises that come out of my face. Well, food. He reacts to the word food. But this is all behaviors that require a fair amount of brain power. Garter snakes are another example of intelligence in snakes. They are one of the few truly social snakes. They communicate via pheromones and body language, and they even have best friends whom they can recognize and remember even after lengthy absences. And these best friends sometimes look at new best friends, and when they see an old best friend that they haven't seen in a while, they'll introduce each other's new best friends, and sometimes they can they'll reconnect. It's really sweet. Anyways, Hobbs, my Mackle's python, recognizes me and my family versus other people. He does live shows with me, and he knows the routine and what to do when he's coming out of the box and stretching out for posing with the kids. He has devised also no less than 3 different techniques to escape his triple locked enclosure, displaying an impressive ability to understand 1, what exactly is holding his door closed. It's 2 hook locks and a barrel lock, by the way. And 2, how to either unlock or work around the locks to get out. My patrons have heard the whole story. Behind the scenes stuff like that is actually another perk my patrons get if you didn't know. Another great example is crocodilians. They display all sorts of brainy behavior, and I've got a dedicated video coming soon on these guys, so I don't really want to spoil the surprise here, but we've got crocs working together to hunt and build, and even some using tools. It's mind-boggling how far apart the common perception of reptile intelligence is from their actual intelligence. And there's still more to learn. Like I mentioned earlier, we have only just started to scratch the surface. Time for one more? Good. This last one demonstrates how well evolved snakes are at what they do. I'm sure you all know that snakes can eat really big meals compared to their body size. Pretty basic snake knowledge. But getting food down is only the beginning. What about after they have swallowed their prey? Well, we have discovered that snakes actually grow and shrink when they eat. Their stomach grows larger to accommodate the prey item. As they digest their meal, they are actively building new digestive tissues to better digest that meal. They can increase the volume of their blood. The heart and liver of the snake can grow up to 40% larger, and they physically add body tissue, which can later be reabsorbed during periods of no food. I'm not talking about putting on a couple pounds over the holidays that you're totally gonna drop when your New Year's resolutions kick in to get into shape. I'm talking about them actually growing and shrinking in relation to eating and fasting. Mind blown. Okay, so there is some debate as to whether the physical size or length of the snake can actually change, or if it can all be attributed to just measurement errors, which is certainly the case in some instances. But I have actually seen this firsthand in my own collection, in my own house. Dozer, my giant corn snake, likes to brumate in the winter. Even if we don't cool him down, he'll just park himself on his cool hide and barely move for 3 months, and he refuses food. When he came out of his brumation last spring, he was 5'10". He was just a hair over 6'1" when Adam Wickens visited in August. And it's not just like he gets bigger like round-wise. He does, but he also gets longer. His head gets bigger, like his face gets bigger. He's like 2 different snakes in terms of his size. It's crazy. He does this every year. And by the way, if you're thinking to yourself, 6+ feet for a corn snake is awfully big, especially a male, you'd be right. We think that Dozer is actually a corn snake bull snake hybrid called a turbocorn. That explains his size, the keeling he has on many of his back scales, and his vocal disposition. Neat, eh? Now, these are just a few of all of the things that I've learned out of the incredible amount of existing information out there on reptiles already. However, like I mentioned earlier, we have only just started to scratch the surface, and new studies and information are coming out all the time. So whether you are new to the hobby or have been keeping reptiles for years, there is so much still to learn, and I think that that is super exciting. What are some of your favorite reptile facts or the neatest things that you've learned? Let me know in the comments below and maybe I'll do a video on them. Thanks again to my patrons, and thanks to you all for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and until next time, remember to nurture all nature. Bye! It's like golf. You could try golf.
You're saying it's too late to start drinking?
Yes. You missed your time for that in like the 19 times.
19 times?
Yeah, because I was sticking out of your meat suit. You'll see that it glows. If you wanted a fun science project while you're in immense pain. There you go. That's for you. They're bridging. Are we even recording? I have my mic off.
No, your mic's on.
No, I took my mic off and was playing with it.
I can see that. It's in your hand.
Sorry. All right, let's.
Are we done?
Yeah.